the awareness on about diabetes and diabetes nephropathy.
Yep.
Well, I mean, this is one of the biggest, actually, probably the most prevalent diseases today, right? The 73% of Americans carry either a little bit of weight, extra weight, or insulin resistance or diabetes. Actually, close to 10%, 11% are diabetic. And the first in diabetes is a disease of having high blood sugar, and the blood sugar gives what we call macrovascular complication, the big vessels, disease, and the small vessels, microvascular diseases. The small vessels is what impacts the kidneys. The kidneys have very, very tiny vessels. This is where the blood kind of sends out what needs to go in the urine. And they're tiny and thin so that the substance can travel through the vessel and go out. And when you start developing diabetes, one of the first damages you can have is of the damages of the microvessels because they're thin and deposits there can impact them. So it's a major, major complications. A lot of diabetic patients end up dying from dialysis. They end up damaging their kidneys and go to dialysis. And it's one of the biggest expenditure of the diseases when a patient becomes dependent on dialysis. This is where expenses are so high and payers kind of try to find a solution for it. In it wasn't talked a lot about because medicine up to date have not provided a solution for diabetes, unfortunately, although the solution is actually easy. I went to med school, MD, PhD, and 2 masters, and I've been, studying everything in medicine, trying to cure diseases. And diabetes, they always teach us this disease that sits between genetic predisposition, that sits between acquired lifestyle, but then the solution is these hundreds of pills, which actually none of them reverse the disease. They all help manage blood sugar, not by disappearing, not by canceling the sugar or not increasing the sugar in the blood. It just moves the sugar from the blood to the tissue, right? And so when you classify the diabetes medications, they're classified as something that supports the hormones that tell the sugar to go out of the blood, or supports the hormones that absorb or increases the absorption of sugar to the tissue from the blood. So the sugar is not going anywhere; it's just staying in your body, but more in the cells than in the blood. And when sugar goes, or carbs, when carbs go to the cells, they deposit into fat, which increases the resistance to insulin, which increases the complication and the advancement within the disease. And this is why you don't hear, you don't hear my uncle has diabetes, he's on 2 pills, but hopefully next month he'll be cured. You never hear that. You just hear like he started with metformin, then we had to add another one, then another one, then another one, then he becomes insulin dependent because the pancreas fails and now he has to inject insulin. So the story of diabetes, it's actually one of the most, we call it unconspired conspiracy theory, is we define by FDA norms, we define diabetes as sugar in the blood. We said, okay, how can we cure the disease, decrease sugar in the blood? Let's move it from the blood to somewhere else. It wasn't let's stop getting sugar into the blood or carbs into the blood. And that is the mysteries, why we haven't focused, why we're okay to spend $600 billion per year on diabetes, and we're not willing to put 100 or 200 billion of it for helping people getting less blood into the sugar to start with. Yeah. And this is where the story of intermittent fasting started to appear, right? Say a lot of, for us, so, when I left medicine and started getting more into lifestyle medicine, and learning more about nutrition and lifestyle. And you look at diabetes in a very simple way. Now, from that angle, you overeat, you develop, first insulin resistance because you're gaining fat. Fat creates that resistance. And then you become diabetic because the body's not able to take, the sugar from the blood. Well, what's the solution to overeating? It should be under eating. And if you want to do it even faster, you should be no eating. Right? That's fasting. So it's as simple as that. And And to me, and this is how actually intermittent fasting started, is like, wait a second, okay, it's difficult to not to eat for a long period of time, so we're all gonna get hungry. So how about trying intermittent fasting for diabetes? And this is how big physicians, like Dr. Jason Fung, for example, started. He's a nephrologist, and he started seeing his patients, on dialysis, and dialysis is never-ending story till death. And he's like, how can I fix them very fast before it's too late? And he started telling them, can you skip breakfast? Skip one meal a day. And instead of eating 3 to 5 meals, just skip one at least. And that can help you a little bit. And this is how some of the voices of fasting for diabetes started to shine. A lot of doctors joined that movement.
So how does fasting help? Does it allow the kidneys a little bit of time to recover, or is there something more specific that it's doing, or is it just as simple as you're taking in less sugar throughout the day?
That's a fantastic question. It's actually, there's two types of fasting, and each one helps differently. Is what we call intermittent fasting, which is fasting a few hours up to 2 days. And there's periodic or prolonged fasting, which is going beyond 2 days. And why they're different? Because the first 2 days, you have enough. The intermittent fasting, a few hours up to 2 days, is what we call a metabolic fasting. It's meaning the body has enough reserve to compensate. So you have enough fat, glycogen. You go and you break those down and you use them to compensate. So you're bringing, like you said, less sugar from outside. So you're fasting for a few hours, and the body starts burning fat and using glycogen as source to compensate for it. So this is very beneficial because you're eating less carb, like you said, but you're burning fat, which is why you have insulin resistance, and this is part of becoming diabetic. We call it metabolic syndrome or pre-diabetes. So you're getting less blood to the sugar and you're burning fat, which is a part of the problem. Now, when you cross the 2 days, the crisis, the body says, look, I've been for 2 days fasting, I'm burning my fat, I'm using my glycogen, but I'm depleting my reserves very fast. This is a stressful situation. And the body tells the cells, I cannot feed you any longer. You have to optimize your performance. You have to consume the intracellular, debris, organelles. Try to get by with what you have and try to fix the way you behave because we need you at your best to survive. So fasting moves from a metabolic fat burning response the first 2 days to a cellular rejuvenation impact after 2 days. In cellular rejuvenation, when cells are under stress, they actually, and this won the Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2016, a process called autophagy. Cells eat, self rejuvenate. The cells start rejuvenating. And this is how sometimes damaged organs, like the kidneys, like the pancreas, like the brain, what we're testing periodic fasting on multiple health conditions. We see that, hey, you're giving this organ enough time, first with no damage, and number two, the cells are rejuvenating and trying to heal. So this is where this is why fasting kind of boomed the last 7, 8 years. It wasn't just because you lose weight. Everyone was talking about autophagy, which is that cellular rejuvenation piece. And most people think it happens with 16 hours of fasting. It does not. You get across 2 days, and sometimes in some people, if you have no metabolic rate, you have a lot of reserves. You have to reach day 3 or day 4 to get into that cellular rejuvenation because you have more reserves and you don't burn a lot. You have a low metabolic rate. And this is why we actually exist. This is what we started studying water fasting. And when we discovered the major benefits of the cellular benefits with fasting, once you cross the day 3 and the day 4 and day 5, this is where the National Institute of Health, the government's arm that gives dollars into disruptive research and cutting edge research, they give us millions of dollars to develop the fasting mimicking diet or the fasting mimicking nutrition. Is can you find a way to nourish the body over 5 days with a special food formula that the cells would not recognize? Meaning, can you nourish the body so that the patient or the consumer is eating, but the cells the radars of the cells do not detect the food enough to be satisfied, and they stay in fasting mode. And we found a formulation some 14 years ago that we've been testing in mice and in humans. We call it the fasting mimicking diet, or Prolon, Prolon. And you take it, it's a box that we ship to you at your house, and it has your food, all designed, your foods, your pills, your drinks, supplements. And you eat it over 5 days, and your body doesn't know you're eating. So you're getting the metabolic and the cellular benefits of fasting together.
How do you pull that off? How do you intake food that your body doesn't recognize as food?
So it has been over 36 millions of dollars in research, 14 universities, Stanford, University of Southern California, UCLA, University of Milan, University of Genoa. So all these universities got together, but the core of that effort was USC, University of Southern California. And the head of this research, his name is Walter Longo, Professor Walter Longo. Many of your audience probably heard about him. He wrote the Longevity Diet book. Very, very recommended to read the Longevity Diet book. And he's an expert of what we call the nutrient sensing pathways. In his Longevity Diet book, he describes how the cells senses food. There are three sensors, if you want, a food and or pathways that senses food: the PKA, the RAS, and the TOR pathways. And whenever there's nutrients going through those, the cell says, "Okay, I'm eating." And so he started studying at which level these sensors, if I feed you different formulations, at which level these sensors are not over triggered or over, excited, so that the cell is feeling nutrients coming in, but is not sure that it's being nourished enough and stays in a fasting mode. So it took a few years to understand the sensing pathways, then to test every macronutrients and micronutrients to make sure that they don't trigger the pathways enough, and then to put them all together into a full diet of 5 days. And then did mice trials to make sure that in animals, first it mimics fasting, then went to human trials. And now we have over 34 human trials that are either have been completed or are happening today.
So from an audio engineer perspective, it sounds like what you're saying is that we have a noise gate, which is simply a threshold, right? That
Yes.
triggers the microphone to come on.
Yes.
So we've got a noise gate in there, and if we stay below that gate,
Below that.
the
Yeah.
body doesn't know it.
It doesn't mean there's no noise. So there's food. This is
Right,
our
the noise
diet, but
is
it's just you're
happening.
not detecting. Yeah.
So you're taking in calories, you're gaining or losing energy, or gaining energy. All that. It's real food. You're eating. You're full.
Yeah.
It's just staying below the threshold.
Yes.
So back up a little bit. Whenever you were talking about fasting, two different types of fasting, and the long-term option there, are you saying that our cells or our mitochondria actually function better in order to be able to rejuvenate? Where are they getting? Just eating the debris, feeding off of the debris? So you send them into panic mode, and they're like, "Hey, we're going to be better now because we're panicking. We found a better way of living life."
Yes. I always compare this phenomenon to, like, compare the body like to a company, and say a company needs $1 million per month to operate, and say the body needs whatever 1,600 calories per day to operate. And if you come to the CEO of that company, to the president, and you tell him, you know what, I'm going to compare intermittent fasting and then prolonged fasting. You need $1 million, you're going to get it, but I'm going to wait like a day and then give it to you. Okay. I mean, I have a little bit of money in the bank. I'll lose one day of, whatever my expenditure for that day, and then I'll get the $1 million, a day after. So that's intermittent fasting. You lose fat, you lose a little bit of fat every time you do it, but you're not going to change your behavior. The money is coming. Now, if I come to you and tell you, you need $1 million this month, I'm not going to give you that money. You got to go by with no money this month. So it's a crisis. So now, and this is what separates fasting from all the diets, right? The other diets is like, okay, you need $1 million, I'll give you 950,000, or I'll give you 900,000. You lose a little bit of money in the bank, the 100,000 difference, and then you operate, you adjust to it, and you move forward. And this is how low calorie diet work. It's an adjustment of how much fat you have, and you lower that. But fasting is so strong as a stress then that CEO will say, what do you mean I'm not going to get $1 million this month? I'm going to go and restructure the company, right? I cannot survive. And that's the restructuring stress imposed by fasting on the body. So you say,
Like,
okay, I got to go fix everything. I got to cut some of the extra travel budgets, right? That's autophagy, self-eat, so improve. I'm gonna stop these, unnecessary ventures projects that we have, and I'm gonna start, investing in my best employees, and you start seeing that shift of the company becoming very cost effective. And then after, when you refund that president again, the company will grow in a very, in a healthy way, because it has gone off spoilage that it had before, right? Give a CEO money, a lot of money every year, they'll overhire, they'll overspend, they buy the private jet that you talked about, right? And that's the body, that's diabetes. It's like over being spoiled. It's okay to have more fat in the cell. It's okay to have high blood sugar. It's okay to be a little bit brain damaged. It's okay for the cell to become cancerous. And then fasting comes in and puts what we love about fasting, it's a masterful intervention. It's not like a medicine that acts on one receptor with side effects. Every cell in the body, when you fast, is fasting. Every cell lives on calories. There's no escape mode. And when you fast, literally every cell from your hair all the way to your toes is going through the process of feeling the pain of not having food. And and this is not artificial. It's actually the way we live today, where we eat all the time, is artificial. Fasting has been with humanity. Actually, it was core of human diet, because for hundreds of thousands of years we didn't have easy access to food. So it's the most natural reaction defense of the body. We were walking in nature. We didn't have refrigerators in the past, and easy access to food. And when there was food, we would eat. When there was no food, we don't eat. And the body knows what to do, which is, let me protect. And so what fasting today, the science caught up with nature, and the science showed, and religion, by the way, because fasting is the only common word between all divine religions. So science today caught up with the value of fasting, a masterful, synchronized, healthy, normal, traditional, natural way to cleanse and rejuvenate your cells that we had lost in the last 50 years because we started eating all the time. And this is how we start developing obesity and diabetes and Alzheimer's, and the rates are increasing while we're spending more money on healthcare. When I graduated from med school, we were spending $2.3 trillion on healthcare, and now we're spending over 4 trillion, and we didn't curb any one of the diseases, the chronic diseases. And actually, last year, we adjusted our lifespan downwards by 0.4 years in the US. So imagine, we're spending double in 20 years. We're living sicker. And you would say, okay, with the medicine, we're living sicker longer. We're living sicker shorter. So, and this is not genetics. Genetics, they don't change within 10, 20 years. This is not like, oh, sorry, you have this happen to you. This is lifestyle. We change our lifestyle. We started eating all the time, stress induced, lack of sleep, a lot of concentrated calories within food to taste great, and we believe that fasting is a masterful intervention to correct from that. You can do intermittent fasting, which is just skipping a meal. It can help you a little bit with the weight management. We have chosen to go with the masterful fasting, the 5 days, that actually gives you a lot of metabolic changes, but a lot of cellular changes. Of course, we don't want people to fast on water. This is why we developed the fasting mimicking diet. And it's a 5 days of food that we deliver. It's called Prolon. And we have taken 23 years of research to get it there and get it outside. We have 240 patents now on it. Over 1 million people have done it. Over 15,000 clinics in the US now are recommending it. So it's becoming a popular movement to really catch up. All what you need to do is that 5 days, only 2 or 3 times a year. You will rarely hear somebody telling you, do my food just 5 days, 2 to 3 times a year. But this is what you need. If you're a Formula One car, or you're in a race, any race, NASCAR or Formula One, what you do is twice in a race, you take a pit stop, right? What happens there? Mechanics come in, check everything, fix everything, gets you back healthier longer. That's fasting. That's periodic fasting. You put your cells in check to get fixed. and it's showing tremendous benefits.
Is it something that you would say should become a health movement or a pit stop for everyone? Or is it something that you should start once you become pre-diabetic? When do you start?
It's definitely a movement, a major movement. And again, it's not an artificial movement. It's getting us back to what our body was designed to do, which is to eat sometimes and not to eat other times. So it's a movement of catching. It's a scientific movement to catch up back with nature and religion and human evolution. Almost everyone should fast, and people like, how come? I mean, skipping, not eating every 12 hours is sleeping and not eating is part of that's fasting. That's part of human evolution. That's part of how we should live. The periodic fasting for 5 days. If you're healthy and you can do it just 2 to 3 times a year to rejuvenate your cells. If you're, like you said, later stage of life, you're 40, 50, 60 now, and you feel like, hey, I'm pre-disease, or I'm going to start getting, my first. This is where, and I'm gaining weight at that age. Is a little bit more difficult to get rid of weight. This is where people do Prolon 3 to 4 times a year, not 2 to 3 times, 3 to 4 times, because they want to lose more weight and they want to prevent further. And once you have a health condition, we're going to start launching soon our programs for diabetes remission and regression program. This is when we ask you to do it 6 times a year. So 2 to 3 times at early stage, because you don't have any medical reason. You're not overweight. You just want to do it for rejuvenating your cells. The more you cross age 40 and 50 and 60, this is where it's like 3 to 4 times your pre-health condition you want to prevent. And once you have a health condition, what our clinical trial, what we're studying, is to do it close to that 6 times to be able to put the body into a more intensive rejuvenative process.
How many calories? How many calories are we talking about throughout the day for the 5 days?
On day one, it's 1,100, and on day 2, 3, 4, and 5, it's 800 calories.
Okay, so pretty restrictive, but it's not impossible. It's not something. It's better than a 5 day fast, right?
For sure, we didn't want to mimic fasting with starvation. We wanted to mimic fasting with food. Otherwise, people cannot comply. And we have 91% average compliance rate.
Wow.
So, which is very rare to find on any diet, because every diet wants to subscribe you for like days and days and weeks and months. This is just 5 days. That's it. You do it once every quarter, every 3 months or 4 months. Just give us 5 days, do your Prolon. And the beauty, you'll feel it on day 3. So we talk about autophagy and rejuvenation. So day 1, you'll be like, I'm eating 1,100 calories. It's great. Day 2, you start feeling a little bit, okay, my body is burning fat and glycogen. And day 3, you feel the autophagy. You feel the change, the something is happening to the body. Day 4 and 5, you feel almost high. I'm like, my cells are rejuvenated, high energy. You need less sleep. If you're a high performer, what we haven't talked about, which is critical with fasting, is the body cuts fat but doesn't go after muscle. When you do any diet, the body goes after muscle and fat. They're both sources of energies that you want to cut. But the stress of fasting imposes a rejuvenation on the muscle, and the muscle actually mass stays the same. We have done 2 human trials showing that. And think about it. So again, you're walking in nature 100,000 years ago, and there's no food. The body actually breaks down fat to ketones to feed the brain, so that you're still conscious and you can walk to find food. And the body tries to rejuvenate the muscle so that you keep going to find the food. Otherwise, we would be exterminated as a human race. So part of the stress of coping with fasting is a muscle protection, which when we do the Prolon trials, we show, even we did actually on male, one of the trials we did it on young male adults, which have the most muscle and could lose it pretty fast. And there was no decrease in muscle mass. There's a lot of NBA players and other professional players that actually do the product in the off season or when they have injury, because it keeps their muscle, cuts the fat, and helps them with the rejuvenation process.
So in a 5 day fast, what are there measurables that we can see are working, or is it an energy focus level that's improved after 5 days? Like what allows us to see the results in such a short period of time?
Yeah, there are there are actually four measurables you can have. Number one, if you have a, um, a weight scale, but not just to show that you lost a lot of weight, female use around 5.3 pounds within the 5 days, men up to 8 pounds just in that 5 days window. But also, if you have a scale that gives you the proportion of lean body mass to fat, so that you see the protection of the lean body mass. Number two, you can do blood tests. You can measure insulin-like growth factors. You can measure IGF. You can measure your cholesterol, your triglycerides, your blood glucose measures. They change in that span. Well, cholesterol needs HbA1c needs 2 to 3 months. Cholesterol needs a couple of months. You won't see those right away. But the ones who change right away are IGF, blood glucose, um, CRP if you have high CRP. And then you can measure, we just published last month, the rejuvenation happens everywhere, and we were let it be visual. So we did the randomized clinical trials on skin, showing skin changes before and after. So we did that clinical trial with women. They did 3 prolons once a month, and then they went and we did a RISA and other, meaning they show you, it's not just visual, they show you really the cells of the skins, and we show major statistical significant differences in the skin glowness, in skin hydration, and women felt confident and happier. So even the skin, you can see a difference. And this is actually what most people tell us after they do Prolon, is people tell them not just that you lost a lot of weight, but your skin has completely changed. And that's another, symptom of that cellular rejuvenation that's happening. As I mentioned, every cell in the body goes through a fasting process when there's no calories. In our case, you're getting the calories, but the cells is not affecting them.
And you're losing probably more weight, more fat than you would if you did the same calorie, different diet for the same
Yes,
amount of time.
because it's a crisis. If you do a low calorie diet, your body will just is measuring calories and working on the delta. When you do the fasting mimicking diet, your body is thinking that you're almost not eating, and the action is much stronger. And in a low calorie diet, again, you lose fat and muscle. In a fasting mimicking diet, this is critical because the another unconspired conspiracy theory is the low calorie diets, right? Because you lose the weight, but you lost muscle at the same time, and then you stop. Every diet is designed. This is why there's a movement against diets. Every diet is meant to start at some point, and you stop at some point. And when you stop, you go back, you eat, because you default. It's an everyday. They don't genuinely change your lifestyle. They just want to sell you that product. And then the day you stop that diet, you go back to your food, your metabolic rate is low because you lost muscle. So your burn rate is low. Then you eat normal food again and you pick up fat fast, and you're not picking up muscle enough. And this is why the most, probably a sound diet is to be more on the protein diet with exercise, because you want to protect that muscle and metabolic rate. But otherwise, you're just slowing down your metabolic rate and picking up back fat. So fasting and Prolon are different. You're not losing lean body mass. So you come out of it, I cut fat, but I didn't cut muscle. This is how the performance, the energy is higher. And then once you go back to your food, of course, if you go back and eat unhealthy, you're going to pick up that weight, but it's going to take time, and it's going to be a slow fat pickup rather than a quick one.
So, what does it look like? Is this a powdered salt, water soluble drink? Is it a frozen meal? Is it a bar? What are we talking about?
No, I mean, we believe in nature, and we don't do processed food. We don't do any artificials or any. So it's bars and soups and crackers and drinks. We made it very user friendly. In most mornings, you would have your breakfast bar with us, which is high premium macadamia based. The diet is full vegan. The diet is natural and premium ingredients. So you have your morning bar, then you have your soups at lunch with some olives and crackers. You have a snack in the afternoon, and you have your dinner again with a soup and other elements. So gluten-free, low carb, no dairy, soy-free, very healthy, ingredient-based, very natural, but all designed to go under the radars of the cells so that the cells don't feel satisfied while they're getting nourished.
So is it the food specifically, the ingredients, I guess, that are staying under that threshold? Is this something that can be mimicked by other end users? People use it once and then they can buy their own olives at the grocery store, or are there other ingredients that you guys are using?
No, you can. I mean, you cannot buy it from the grocery because if one of the element is off, then the cells detects the food, then the cell goes off fasting, and you're just on a low calorie diet. So it's very technologically engineered in a sense that it's natural ingredient, but very tested to the micro and the macronutrient level, which amino acids from which source at which time of the day, with which other fat, with which other carbs, with which other flavoring, with which other supplement at which time of the day, so that because insulin in the morning and cortisol and is different than insulin in the afternoon, and cortisol's level absorption in the morning and being catabolic in the morning is different than being anabolic at night. So there's a lot of details here that took, again, tens of millions, not just millions, tens of millions of dollars in research and over 13 years to get to that. What we made it look simple and natural, but it's actually very technological.
Yeah. So where can we find more information? We want to try it.
If you want to read about the science behind everything we talked about today, and there's a lot more, is you can go to L-Nutra.com. L-Nutra, that's the name of our company. L stands for longevity, dash Nutra, nutrition. So we believe in longevity through nutrition. If you want to read more about the product that we mentioned, Prolon, you can go to prolonfast.com or prolonfmd.com or Prolon Life or Prolon Health. Once you Google Prolon, you're going to read a lot of articles and find websites and data around it.
So I think I have one final question. Is, you're recommending for different stages of life, 2 to 3 times a year, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, or 4 to 6. Is cost the only reason that you wouldn't recommend 12 times a year, 15 times a year, or is there detriment that enters into the picture if you're doing it too often?
It's not cost and it's not the detriment. It's just the marginal benefit, right? So you remember the example where we said you're the CEO of a company and you need $1 million, right? And I come and I say, look, we're not going to give you the money this month, or with Prolon, we're going to give you special money that is earmarked to special parts of your company. So you feel you're fasting, you're going to restructure the company. There's not a lot of benefits for coming the next month and telling you, oh, you just finished the restructure, let us restructure again. You're like, no, give me money, let me grow the company to the next level. Once I get spoiled again, refast me so that I refix again. And so it's a marginal utility that doesn't make it beneficial, necessary that every month you go and you fast. Now, this is if you're a spoiled but healthy company, right? Now, if you tell me, well, I have a major issue in operations, and so let's talk about diabetes remission or pre-diabetes, right? So I have a major issue in operations. I restructure, it wasn't enough. Can we continue the restructuring a little bit longer so that we fix it? And this is where we say, okay, you can do it once a month, part of a diabetes remission program up until you fix that, and then you continue by doing it once every 3 months or once every 4 months. So the only reason to repeat frequently is if you have a reason that still hasn't been fixed.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. I personally think I might have to check it out. It sounds pretty easy to do and exponentially beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, we strongly recommend that you ask me, is it for everyone? The only folks that should not do it are, if you're a pregnant woman or lactating because you're growing a baby inside of you. If you're like end of life, or you're you have multiple health conditions and you need to be like nourished and fast at that time. if you have any allergies to the ingredients. Otherwise, if you don't have those, this is something that most of us should look at and try.
Any parting words for the audience?
No, I
Final
hope we
thoughts?
change somebody's life today. I think, we in the last 7-8 years we start talking about fasting as if it's like a magical new thing, or people ask me, is that just a new fad? Probably this is the only pattern, this is the only lifestyle that is not a fad, because it was part of our life, human life on this planet for hundreds of thousands of years. And science just woke up and identified the value of fasting, because we started eating every day 3 to 5 times a day. So we're living a fad today, but we went through fasting, go back and alternate and find a balance of life that takes us off this major epidemic of chronic conditions. And hopefully we're going to help, a lot of people with creating that movement of lifestyle change and prevention.